welcome back to Party Trick Astrology. I'm Nina.
I'm Shaina.
And this is Lilith in Gemini, Black Moon Lilith in Gemini. This is another installment of our Lilith series. We're going through the signs and through the houses, and we're going sign, house, sign, house. So we just posted Lilith in the second house, and after this we'll do Lilith in the third house. I'm charging my phone, which is why this is randomly dangling here. Please excuse that. But along with Black Moon Lilith through the signs and houses, we also have a whole video dedicated to what is Lilith, what are all of the different Liliths. So we definitely recommend you check that out if you want some clarification on that. But assuming that you already know everything there is to know about Lilith, let's get right into this one.
Yeah.
Lilith and Gemini.
Yes, Lilith and Gemini. So I am now wearing a shirt for, I'm going to say most Lilith signs. Sorry, Aries. Y'all didn't get one. Y'all are going to be pretty upset. I'm so sorry. But this is my Lilith and Gemini shirt. It also matches the rainbow that I have literally right here.
Perfect.
So we got a double rainbow going on. Because Lilith and Gemini, represents the child. Represents the curiosity, the fun, So that's why I went with this look. Oh, also, for each Lilith sign, I'm doing a little, phrase to, put it all together in, the most simplistic party trick worst way. And a Lilith and Gemini is pretty easy. They're just a lying two-faced bitch, So that's what we got here.
Right, with Lilith really being your kryptonite, that itch that you need to scratch so much that it scabs and it hurts, and then you pick the scab because it feels so good and then it scars. With Lilith being that real self-destructive kind of desire within you, I think that one of Lilith and Gemini's biggest crutches is definitely the gossip, is definitely the lying, a little bit of that, back and forth, framing the narrative in whatever way that they need to. It's not that Gemini as an archetype is inherently dishonest. It's just not so fixed, it's mutable, so it can go wherever the wind takes it, and for that reason it can frame a story in whatever way it needs to kind of get any desire that it wants. So when you're highlighting the negative parts of Gemini, you're going to be highlighting a little bit of a manipulative side, a little bit of a two-faced kind of flip-floppy side, and definitely with Lilith in Gemini, your curiosity gets the best of you. I feel like that is the root of all of Lilith's, first of all, obsessions and trouble. When it comes to gossip, why do you gossip? It's because you're so curious about other people's lives. You want to figure out what those are all about. Why do you get down wormholes of conspiracy theories when you should be doing your homework? It's because you're so curious about Heaven's Gate. You need to know every single detail about it. And Gemini is all about the little things. So the reason why that curiosity can be so destructive is because you're just so curious about every single little detail. It's one thing to hear a nice, juicy sip of gossip. It's another thing to know every molecule of that gossip. So there can just be a real winding road that your curiosity leads you down. It's not enough to read a headline about the Kardashians in People magazine. You need to read the whole article, then you need to read OK Magazine's take, then you need to get on Khloe Kardashian's Instagram stories, then you need to get on the T-Spill channel to see how they covered Kourtney Kardashian's side of the story. You just need all of the information, and that is your kryptonite, that is your itch, that is the self-destructive part of you that feels so good to indulge in, but that you end up making sacrifices for.
Curiosity is such a huge thing when it comes to Lilith and Gemini, and I think that a lot of that root of that curiosity is also boredom, because Gemini is mutable and it rules the mind, so it's here, there, and it's everywhere. Lilith and Gemini just has a very complex, always thinking, you know, double-sided, two-faced kind of thing, that it can just get bored, and so it needs to constantly take in new information. It can also just get bored from its own life, you know? It already knows all the drama of themselves. What's the drama with them? What's going on with them? What's going on with this? Maybe this is a little bit more exciting. Maybe this will, you know, you're just trying to stimulate your brain. I feel like Lilith and Gemini is definitely like when you were a little baby, you were the baby that was like crying, not because you were hungry, not because you were this, not because you were that, just because you were bored. You needed stimulation of some sort, you know? And, you know, Gemini represents the twins. One form of stimulation isn't enough. You need two, you know? I don't want to just know what's going on in Daisy's life. What's Jasmine's side of the story? I need to see both angles, you know?
Yeah, Gemini also rules trade, it rules community, it rules communication to an extent, you know, just like socialization in general. So you can get obsessed with people, quite literally. Your curiosity will most likely extend itself specifically to the lives of other people, and you'll want to get into everybody's business, and that is your kryptonite, that is your itch, like getting into other people's business. And so also the sacrifices that you make also have to do with people. You might end up sacrificing relationships, either because, you know, your intense desire to get this information about this drama going on between Susie and Sally will make it so that they don't feel any empathy coming from you and their difficult situation that they're going through in their relationship, and they don't want to be friends with you anymore. Or you're just constantly always gossiping in the cafeteria that suddenly you're not the most pleasant person to be around, and you kind of lose touch with your close friends. Or even like the sacrifices that you make are that your group of friends are not the most uplifting and nurturing people to be around, because like attracts like. And if you're acting out of your Lilith, then and you're constantly gossiping and you're not acting with a lot of integrity necessarily, which no Lilith speaks to integrity at all, so don't take this as an attack on you. But because Gemini has to do with sociability and Lilith denotes a lack of integrity in that area, you might not be the most socially integral, and that will cause a sacrifice in your relationships, or your relationships aren't with people who have a lot of social integrity, and then you're not feeling very nurtured and you're not feeling very uplifted by the people that you surround yourself with, you know? And it is important to note, I say this every video, but Lilith isn't, you know, the most dominating thing in your chart. It's just a little node out there. It's not like the ruler of your personality or character or whatever, unless it is, you know, unless aspects or certain things make it so. But on its own, you don't necessarily want to take Lilith as like the primary reader of your personality or your character. So it's not like you have to act out of this Lilith, but when you have to act out of this Lilith, you have to. It's all or nothing. You know, if you allow yourself to act out of this Lilith, it's a very steep and slippery path into this toxic behavior and subsequent consequences.
To go back with what Ina was talking about with like making friends, like Lilith and Gemini, like she said, like attract likes kind of situation. And Lilith and Gemini is always gonna look for people that mentally stimulate them. And people that mentally stimulate them aren't necessarily people that they get along with, you know? So you could be just initially going into these relationships for the sake that they are a contrarian to you. You know, you like to play devil's advocate, maybe this person has very different views than you, or different in this way or different than that. So it makes sense that over time, you know, if you're attracted to people that have different opinions to you or are somehow kind of different and bring something new and unique to your life, it's gonna make sense that you might not be the most compatible with them, you know? Just with Lilith in general, you know, Lilith is usually initially something you were kind of cast away at first. So Gemini represents community. So Lilith and Gemini, you could have had some major issues with your community growing up. Maybe there was drama spread about you. People would gossip about you. People were all up in your business. Maybe there was some rumor that got, you know, that was told and that, you know, blew everything up, or, you know, you did something a little bit embarrassing and now it's your nickname for the rest of your fucking childhood. You know, that's a very Lilith and Gemini thing. You're initially cast out of that group. And so there could be a little bit of a distrust towards people, automatically being, you know, being very careful about what you reveal to them after that, because maybe your Lilith and Gemini overshared, because Lilith and Gemini also loves to overshare, to the wrong person, somebody, you know, with not the best intent with you, and that fucked you over. And so now you're very, very, very careful about who you give information to who. And so some people can see you as a little bit surface level, a little bit superficial, because what you share and what you talk about is very just amongst the brink of things, you know. And also Lilith and Gemini has trouble in general looking internally and really digging deep within them because of just that Gemini nature of, oh, I'm into this now I'm on to that next thing, now I'm on to that next thing. It's not a very emotional placement. So there can be a little bit of a superficiality to Lilith and Gemini as well.
With what Shaina said about Lilith and Gemini being bored easily, I think that that's where the oversharing can sometimes come from. And even like the fabrication that Lilith and Gemini is known to engage in. Like if you're bored and nothing's going on, why not make up a scandalous story, even if it puts you in a bad light? Why not tell this unpleasant anecdote, even if it's just like funny, to kind of spice up the social atmosphere, even if it does garner you a negative nickname, even if it does put you in a bad light. You know, we talked a lot about Lilith and Aries kind of like facing consequences for not having a lot of forethought, and Gemini also doesn't have the reputation of having a lot of forethought either. So this is another trapping that Lilith and Gemini can come into, just kind of like wanting to be stimulated immediately, or just like live in the moment and like have a good time now, or just like experience stimulation now, that they don't necessarily think about the consequences specifically of what comes out of their mouth or how they behave in a social interaction. Whereas with Aries, it was like, what desires that you pursue, or what things do you go after, what do you like literally physically do that will kind of give you consequences as far as your lack of forethought. With Gemini, it's like, what will you say that will give you consequences because of your lack of forethought?
Also with Lilith and Gemini, it's like they have a real good way of getting what they want. You know, Gemini already is a big smoocher, you know, but when you add Lilith in there, it kind of adds like, it kind of makes whatever sign a little bit more, I don't know if perverse is the right word. You know, like you take that like little kid kind of vibe with like that shy, innocent smile and like little glint in their eye, and they use that to get what they want. They definitely will use their innocence, use their childlike immaturity for their own gain. Lilith and Gemini also might have had a troubling childhood, or their childhood might have been taken away from them, or they just, you know, perpetually want to be a child in the sense of like no responsibilities. They can get away with saying what they want when they feel like it, you know, that kind of vibe. And also this can go into, because it is Lilith, it can go very dark. You know, Lilith and Gemini can attract people much older than them for the sake that they have that kind of childish innocence to them. And this can attract much older people who are going to also take advantage of that. And with Lilith and Gemini's natural curiosity and natural kind of open mind, they can fall into a lot of, you know, I guess hazardous situations.
With Lilith speaking to kind of perverse interests that we might have, whether they're like sexual or taboo in some other way, like a cult or something. With a Lilith in Gemini, I notice that these people are just like extremely entertained by the most immature bodily humor. Like, they love a poop joke. They love the shock value. Yeah, they love the shock value of like taking something totally mundane and making it perverse, like a that's what she said situation. Or they can't help it if their mind just kind of goes there. Because with a Lilith and Gemini, with Gemini having to do with the mind and Lilith having to do with perverse things, like, you just might have a little bit of a perverted mind in like that classic 6th grade boy kind of way, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, going down a little bit of a darker path again, Lilith and Gemini straight up can just mean some maybe incestual relations in your family, incestual feelings within you. Like, it also represents kind of having a very like small community where everybody knows everything and everybody is in each other's business and this and that, you know what I mean? And that can also represent, you know, being in a small town and having a big family and having a lot of your family be in the town. There's going to be some shady relationships that like, whoops, maybe happen with your second cousin, you know what I mean? That can be a very big thing with Lilith and Gemini.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like literally incestual, but with Gemini having to do with trade and having to do with community, it might feel like you end up in romantic situations that feel incestual. Like if you live in a small community or if you have a group of friends, you just find that you know everyone that your partner has dated or slept with, or you've just like ended up sleeping with all of the same people as this other person that you know in your small community or friend group has also slept with. Like, it doesn't need to be like literally blood family incestual, but like Gemini is trade, so, and Lilith is rather sexual, so it can just feel like you're trading sexual partners or sexual experiences, or just have a tight-knit community in which like you're sharing so much of the same experiences and people that like it feels incestual. Like, that might be an adjective that you use even if it's not like literally family incest.
I totally know what you're saying. Like, sometimes there are just groups of friends that get too close and they intermerge so much and they spend so much time together that it does feel like this weird incestual family relationship thing, and that can be very common with Lilith and Gemini. You know, Lilith and Gemini just like being attracted to your friends, you know, having a friend first, having that mental stimulation, and then sleeping with them. That can, you know, easily get into an incestual kind of group feeling situation thing, you know? So I have some Lilith and Gemini people to shout out real quick. Let's see here. We've got Lindsay Lohan.
Parent Trap?
Yes! Oh my god, she literally played twins! That's so funny. Editing Shaina here. Something that's so big that I feel like we didn't notice. Obviously, Gemini Liliths like to gossip, but oh my god, Lindsay Lohan has been gossiped and shit-talked and been plastered all over magazines, like just being shown in like the worst light just because people like to get gossip from her. You know, like people like to hear about her, and I feel like a Gemini Lilith, like not only do they spread stuff, but also I feel like they can very much be the victim to just a lot of shit being spread about them. So just wanted to include that. Marlon Brando has a Lilith and Gemini. I feel like his mouth gets him in so much trouble. Drake just loves to tell his love stories everywhere and share them and then get into drama with that.
I'm sorry, I just like every person that I recognize, I'm like, twin thing. Drake has a line, if you had a twin, I would still choose you.
Oh yeah. That's so
like,
funny.
what a stupid line, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, he does have stupid little childish lines. His lyrics are, you know, we're all like, we've experienced that as a kid, which is why I feel like kids are very attracted to him.
Kids are attracted to Drake?
Well, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like when you're a kid is when you're into Drake more often. Like, I know, like, it was mostly, like, freshman year when everyone was, like, on Drake's dick, is just what I'm saying.
Okay.
You know, because it relates to more of a childlike experience that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember my first love when I felt like this, but he's, like, 35 still feeling the same way, you know?
Kiki,
I don't know how
do you love me?
Exactly, yeah. Let's see here. Karl Marx is a Venus and Gemini. He wrote the Communist Manifesto. He has his own feelings and thoughts towards the way that the community should be run. That's very, very Lilith and Gemini. I think he's also a Lilith in the 3rd house. Shia LaBeouf got famous for that, like, he, like, reboosted his career for that, like, really funny video where he's like, do this, do that, you know?
What is it? Just do it. Is that it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But also, I watched his movie that he like wrote and directed called, I think it was Honey Boy, and it just mostly was talking about his very abusive childhood, and him being like a child star. Everything happening in his childhood was when his like big life stuff was happening, which is like very Gemini. Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy are both people with a Lilith and Gemini. And I thought that was interesting that John Wayne Gacy is also like a child's clown because he would dress up as a child's clown because he's a Pisces sun, Lilith and Gemini. And I always think that like Pisces rules clowns and like Gemini is like kids, you know, attracted to kids, that kind of stuff, attracted to underage people. That can also be like a very Lilith and Gemini thing. And I think that just comes from like that thing of, you know, you feel like your childhood was taken away from you. Maybe you had a bad first experience and now you're trying to take everybody else's first experience. That can be very negative. That can be a Lilith and Gemini thing, you know, trying to almost like take people's childhood away from them in a very nasty way because you feel like yours was. Edgar Allan Poe, he writes really dark poems. That's very Lilith and Gemini.
And that like has to do with the mind and communication, and Lilith is dark and taboo. Didn't Edgar Allan Poe like marry a cousin? I don't know if it was like that.
Yes,
taboo
he
back
did.
then.
She was very young. He was like in his 30s and she was like 12 or something. Roman Polanski also is like was somebody with Lilith and Gemini, and he's out for trial because he's married to, or he had sexual relations or allegated sexual relations with a kid, and he also is Venus in the 12th house with Lilith and Gemini, which I think those two combined might make that. Not saying that if you have that, that's going to happen. I'm just saying I feel like that could have been it. And last one I'll say is Yoko Ono, because she literally split up a group with her words. You know?
There you go.
Yeah, so there you go. That's some Lilith and Gemini people.
That reminded me of the part of Lilith that has to do with domination, with wanting to have control over things. And I think that with Lilith and Gemini, it can be like a bit of a puppet master sort of thing, like wanting to just like have control over the people, to just not just be so obsessed with the ins and outs of everything that's going on in your community, but to have a sort of feeling like you're behind all of that. I wish so bad that I knew people on Big Brother's charts like off the top of my head. I know that like Paul, who is like the most disgusting puppet master season 19 of Big Brother, he has a Mars in Gemini, but I don't know about Lilith. But you know, that can be, you know, a darker side of Gemini, and especially with Lilith, with that desire to control and have power over. I think I want to tack this on to Shaina's like little phrase of the Lilith, which, what did you say it was?
It was like a lying
whiny,
two-faced bitch.
Lying two-faced bitch, but also the puppet master. Like that's Lilith and Gemini, the puppet master.
Just wanting to be in control of other people's minds, because maybe you feel like your ability to say what you wanted to say and ask questions, like you were always asking like too dark of questions, too deep of questions, don't ask that, don't ask this, you can't do this, you can't do that, like, and you probably just saw everybody's like, what's that word? Like when people kind of have like a cumulative thought, that's not the right word, but when people don't think for themselves, you know, you're like, I hate that these people don't think for themselves, and so I'm going to use that, and I'm now going to think for them because I'm the only one that can think for myself, and what I think is right, and I know this, and I know, you know, it could be a big know-it-all position, especially at school. You were probably a little bossy, little know-it-all, you know?
Also, Lilith is quite a contrarian, and so as it relates to Gemini being a sign that rules the mind and intellectual opinions, these people can be very contrarian in their intellectual opinions. Like, why is the example that's coming to mind John Wayne Gacy and how he was like a politician, but he was specifically a Democrat because his dad was a Republican? I think I might be getting my serial killers confused, but I'm pretty sure that's him.
Whoever it was, that makes a lot of sense, just like being that contrarian, like you did this, so I'm gonna do this, so fuck you. Even though, you know, Gemini can really do a lot of stuff that they really don't have any emotional connection to, but they just are doing for the sake of the opposite, you know. And that's kind of where that two-faced thing comes in. One thing they say one thing, the other thing they say another. Also, Lilith in Gemini, I think, has like an insane ability to multitask, almost to the point where these people might need to always be multitasking and having a lot of trouble only paying attention to one thing. But I feel like this is definitely a placement where, I don't know, like I do this, it's like you can't just read a book, you can't listen to music, you have to listen to music while reading a book, you know?
Definitely, and that just comes from like an unquenchable curiosity. And there's just so little time for you to dive into all of the curiosity that you have and to explore all of the things that you want to explore.
Yeah, like Lilith and Gemini can say one sentence about everything and they'll say it with such fervor and that, like, you know, they 100% have always thought this and they know this to be true. And then you'll find out that, like, they said the next thing the next day, and then, like, after that one sentence, they really can't back it up and they don't really know anything more than that, but they're never going to, like, expose that. You know, they're always going to be like, no, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Sorry, I have to come in one more time because I also was thinking about it, and I think that a lot of this comes from Lilith and Gemini realizing from a young age the power of lying and just how easy it is to lie and how much people really do want to give you the benefit of the doubt, especially when you look like a cute little innocent kid, you know, or at least have that demeanor, how far lying can get you. And so I think they just realized how easy it is and how fun it is just to say shit, and I feel like Lilith and Gemini might not, like, kind of like what we mentioned, might not put as much importance on the words that they say, but they probably put a lot of importance on the words that you say because they think that you're telling the truth, and they might think that they're kind of like the only mastermind here that kind of knows how to lie and nobody could ever detect that. Maybe sometimes they can't.
Yeah, and they also want to be very dominating in the way that they speak, in their opinions. They want to, like, win and beat you and be on top of you mentally, because that's very Lilith, like being on top, winning, being the one in power. And with Gemini, it has to do with the mind, and they just want to outsmart you, outwit you, and again, be a puppet master even. But even like a puppet master to the one marionette, because the puppet master with Gemini also has to do with like puppeteering the whole community, the whole house or whatever, but also on a one-to-one situation, Lilith and Gemini is gonna wanna marionette you.
That totally makes me think of this movie that I just watched the other day called Becoming John Malkovich. He is literally a puppeteer and you literally go inside his brain, and that's kind of like what the whole movie's about, and it's total like brain twister. But if you're Lilith and Gemini, I think you should totally watch that movie, and just in general, even if you're not, that's a great fucking movie. But it's totally the vibe.
Actually, that just reminded me, because this is a bit, I have one of my Liliths in the 3rd house, and I think that this might be something of some relevance to Lilith and Gemini, because Lilith is all about like what you didn't have, and so you obsess over and you try to like gain in your life. It becomes like a real strong desire for you. And it might be the case for some Lilith and Geminis that with Gemini having everything to do kind of with pop culture and just like society, social norms, what your circle is interested in, what people in school are even like listening to or wearing or whatever. It might be that your obsession over drama or pop culture or whatever comes from a lack of being included in the know growing up in your school, like maybe you didn't get to listen to the same music that everyone in your school was listening to, or you didn't have access to the brands that everybody was wearing, or maybe you didn't even go to a normal school in general, so you didn't have the experience of like a cafeteria, a locker, so then you become obsessed with maybe just like the hot radio station whenever you can, you're listening to it, or you become obsessed with teen movies from normal high schools or normal schools in general, and you're like, what do normal people do? Like what do the masses, what does pop culture look like? Maybe even like getting really into celebrity magazines or like tea spill channels, and just like getting really obsessed with being up to date with drama on a social level, or being really up to date with popular culture in terms of music or in terms of memes or social media or whatever. Like with Lilith and Gemini, you might have had first the experience of being out of the loop, and then you become obsessed with being in the loop.
Absolutely. I think of like a reading that we did recently for somebody with a Lilith and Gemini in the 3rd house, and she is from one country placed into another, and I think that that has a lot to do with like the how do I American, you know what I mean, let me try to figure this out, just feeling very culturally different, you know, and so then like honing in on that 1,000-fold.
Yeah, kind of like a Mean Girl situation, like a Katie Heron.
Yeah.
Like coming from Africa and all of that culture and whatnot, and then you're like smack dab into the Mean Girls cafeteria, and she just like became obsessed with being a plastic.
Exactly. And that Lilith and Gemini has enough of that mind to figure it out secretly.
Yes.
You know, the fact that she could get there.
And enough of that curiosity to like really go full force.
Which that actually reminds me, which is my next thing, it kind of goes into like, your mouth can get you into a lot of trouble. You can say a lot of things that you're not supposed to say. You can know a lot of things that you maybe shouldn't know, especially at the age that you do, you know, because you do have that curiosity. Why do you know at this age what this means? Why do you understand at this age what this is, you know? But also with that Lilith and Gemini thing, there is something that comes with it, that it is knowing it, but sometimes not experiencing it, but acting as though they did experience it because they know about it. And that can also be something that Lilith and Gemini does, kind of put on this front that they've experienced and been through all this stuff, which is really more Sagittarius, when in reality, they've just read a little bit about it, have a book about it, listened about it, and now they feel like they know everything, even though they haven't actually been through it.
Or maybe even that you get introduced to it from such a young age that you're never able to become mature around that subject. Like say that the first time that you learned what sex was, you were really young and you found like your parents' sex toys and like a Kama Sutra or something, then you're always like giggly of like, hee hee hee, reverse cowgirl, hee hee hee, dildos. Like just always having that childlike mentality around these Lilith topics of sex and taboo stuff and whatever.
That's so funny. I had that conversation with my roommate the other day. It was actually in relation to Neptune and Capricorn a little bit, but I feel like Lilith and Gemini, if you don't know something until you're 18, then you have this mature idea about it moving forward because you experienced it as you're 18. But yeah, I feel like there can be that stunting that even though you knew about it earlier, you were at first, you know, this really mature kid that knew about it. But then when you grow up and you're older, you become this immature person who still just kind of knows about it through that lens, you know?
These people can also be like, because we said two-faced, it can also be kind of like a trader, you know, like literally a trader, like they trade things, and in that, they become a trader because they're selling you a bad deal, you know? They're like such a salesman, such a schmoozer, such a small talker, you know? And these people might be somebody that can like small talk the pants off of anybody, but can they have a really deep emotional conversation? Maybe not, you know? And I feel like that's kind of the downfall to Lilith and Gemini. Like not only are you kind of two-faced, but you can see that everybody also has a little bit of that in them, and you can exploit that and use that for your advantage, you know?
Exactly. You have a real keen emotional insight. We always talk about Lilith being so nonsensical because it is so unrooted from reality, but Gemini is mental. Gemini is intelligent. And so you have a bit more of like an intellectual savvy when it comes to your Lilith being in Gemini than if you had Lilith in almost any other sign. And so you use that intellectual savvy to your advantage to get after your nonsensical desires, your like guttural, emotionally driven desires.
And also, like, layman terms, like, this is going to be somebody who's just a bully or was bullied, you know?
We talked a bit about, you know, Lilith and Gemini sacrifices, definitely social sacrifices in terms of losing trust with people, sacrificing friendships or sacrificing community or sacrificing social well-being because of those itches that you need to scratch. Not being able to form mutual, trusting, nurturing relationships because you're always thinking about having the upper hand on the other person.
Yeah, and talking about like friendships, like, and relationships, I feel like Lilith and Gemini can be very self-sabotaging to them because of their boredom, because of their curiosity. You know, they might just take one little thing that's going on and blow it up out of proportions just because they're fucking bored and they want to argue. Because why the fuck else, you know what I mean? Why not? It doesn't mean much to them. But in that other person can take it very seriously, and that might ruin their relationship, when in reality they were never really mad at them. They were just kind of a little bored. You know, you have that curiosity. You're going to try a lot of things. You're going to get yourself into maybe a lot of questionable situations because of that.
Curiosity killed the cat.
Exactly.
That is Lilith in Gemini. Those are your phrases, Lilith in Gemini, because you're, you know, about the words. So you get a couple. You get that you're a lying two-faced bitch, you're the puppet master, and your curiosity killed the cat.
Speaking of, we've been doing this a lot because this is Lilith and Gemini. You're going to speak with your hands. You're going to fidget. You're going to... I
know, I'm like fidgeting all the time.
I feel like TikTok is so Lilith and Gemini, especially because it has all those like really abusive like POVs where you're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And it's just like these little tidbits of information everywhere. And it's all about this little community, you know?
Also, TikTok is Neptune in Aquarius, but you didn't hear it from this Lilith series.
Okay, so that was Lilith and Gemini. Next up is Lilith in the third house, but we also have a whole Lilith series playlist linked down below. So I know you've got another Lilith placement, you've got a house placement, you've got friends, you've got exes, you've got all that sort of stuff. So check out that.
Indulge in your curiosity and, you know, just learn as much as you can about Lilith.
Okay, thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Bye.